is Betsy Brown. She's one of the co-founders of XI and one of her mentors, not only in XI, but in Survive and Thrive. She's been a recurring subject matter expert on well-being, mental health, and wellness. She's a certified counselor and is one of the kindest, coolest people I know. So Betsy, take it away.
Thank you, Prakar. Very kind introduction. I like to be cool. It's like as you get older, you're like, wow, if someone like you says I'm cool, I accept it. I'm like, cool. So good morning, friends. Thank you so much for joining me this morning and talking about joy and happiness during these crazy hard times. And I think, just to acknowledge that this is individually a really hard time and collectively a hard time. And it's a hard times on top of hard times, right? Everything we're dealing with is bringing up so much trauma, for everybody, personally, collectively, societal trauma, systems trauma. And so we're seeing all of that kind of come to a head. And I know for all of us, we're all just trying to do our best to figure out what our part is to make the world a better place. And so I really think that at the end of the day, if you don't start with yourself and with self-care and with really trying to incorporate some of these exercises in yourself, you can't change anything else until you change yourself. So that's why we're really going to start with just talking about ways that you individually can just add more joy and happiness in your life. So I want to just start by doing just a little meditation. So you'll know that there are a couple other webinars on health and wellness, and those really focus on a lot of how to get out of trauma, anxiety. When we're talking about, you'll hear me talk about, we have two different nervous systems, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Sympathetic nervous system is really your fight, flight, freeze, and your parasympathetic is your rest and digest. And so just know that this whole idea is that when we're activated in the sympathetic nervous system, there are absolutely tools and ways to help you calm yourself down. And so I would say if you haven't seen the other two webinars and you're still feeling like you need some of those tools, please watch those. Because today we're going to kind of move forward in the sense of ways that we can really incorporate joy and happiness and peace into our life. But you'll know that I'm a big fan of meditation and mindfulness. So I like to start. It's way more fun in person, but has to do, right? But I love to start with just a little mindfulness meditation exercise. And we're going to do a 2-minute breath meditation. Basically, I'm just going to have you really find your breath. We're going to try to do some belly breathing because when you breathe, most of us breathe very shallow in general, especially if we're anxious. But a belly breath is actually a very relaxing breath. It helps activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So everybody just put your hand on your belly and just close your eyes and just feel your belly rise and fall. Okay? So for 2 minutes, we're just gonna notice our breath in our belly. And when you notice that your mind is wandering, simply come back to your breath. So just 2 minutes. Okay, everybody just start coming back. Open your eyes. I hope you feel a little more relaxed. Secretly, it's my secret trick. Whenever I speak, I start with a meditation because it helps me relax too. So it's a win-win for everybody, right? So now that we're just kind of in a space that maybe we can, just kind of feel relaxed and grow and move forward a little bit, let's talk about happiness and joy. And those are two things I know that we all want. And essentially, almost everything we do in our life is just at the end of the day is trying to increase our happiness and our joy. I read one time that happiness is an inside job, and that's really true. And a lot of the work and a lot of the research of positive psychology is finding that happiness is a lot more in our control than we think. And there's a pie chart that you can look up if you want to see it. I don't have a copy of it, but basically, it's research that's done out with positive psychology, and it says that 50% of your happiness is set, and that's either your genes, your upbringing, your childhood, whether it was early childhood trauma, that kind of thing. But 50% is kind of out of your control. 10%, and this is shocking, 10% is life situations, circumstances. The majority of us think that our circumstances are really what drive our happiness, and it's proven it's not true. So that's 10%. They've done tons of research with people who both have won the lottery and people who have become paraplegics through accidents. And basically, a year in of both those scenarios, with lottery winners, you get this spike in happiness. A year in, they're back at baseline. With paraplegics, you get a dip in happiness, but within a year, most of them are back at baseline. So it's this idea that life circumstances do not dictate your happiness and your joy. So you have 40% that you can work with. And so that's where I like to focus, is on that 40% and the intentionality that we can all have to really change our happiness and our joy. And I think that one of our biggest problems is that we as humans have a lot of issues. And our big issues are we have a lot of cognitive bias. We end up wanting the wrong things. It's called miswanting. And in general, we think the things that we think are going to make us happy actually don't make us happy. So it's a pretty big problem. So when you're chasing something and you put all your effort into something and you think that's the thing that's going to make me happy and it doesn't, well, that's really discouraging. So I think it's really good for us to talk about the things that we think are going to make us happy and the things that actually make us happy, and really do the distinction there. So when I talk about miswanting, I think that our first thing is when we think of what makes us happy, a lot of times you think about money, prestige, power. We think about success, fame, uh, likes on social media, material possessions. A lot of these things that our consumer driven society says, here, here's what's going to make you happy. This thing is going to fulfill you. And we think about these things and we go after them hard, and we think to ourselves, well, I'm going to sacrifice because I'm going to be happy when I get, you fill in the blank. Well, the problem is we sacrifice, we wait, we get to that place, and then we find out that we are not happy. And so the thing that we have to really understand is that we're really bad at really anticipating the things that are going to make us happy. And we're also really bad at anticipating how long hard things are going to last. So there's a great TED Talk by Dan Gilbert. If you ever have the time, it's, a 20-minute TED Talk on happiness. And he explains a lot of this idea of we overemphasize negative things thinking it's going to really impact our happiness, and it doesn't. And we underemphasize the things that really will help us to be happy. So it's a great one to watch in your own leisure. And one of the biggest reasons why these things don't make us happy, and I'll give a great example of what someone might do. Okay, So let's say, you're working, you have a good job, you're making some money, and you there's a neighborhood in, your area. You're like, oh gosh, if I could only live in that neighborhood, right? So you work really hard, you put in extra hours, and in 5 years, you save up enough money for down payment, and you end up moving into your dream neighborhood, into your dream house. Okay. So what that's going to do is there actually is this bump in happiness, right? You actually do. You feel great, and it lasts about 3 months. And why is that? Something called hedonic adaptation. And basically, we all adapt to either negative or positive things in our life. They don't bring happiness anymore. So everything you do, you're going to adapt to. And suddenly you're also not only hedonic adaptation, but your frame of reference, because we choose our reference points around us. So suddenly you're in this nicer neighborhood where, okay, everyone has a nice house, but now some people have nicer cars than you. Okay, some people have more toys than you, right? All of a sudden your frame of reference has just gotten bumped up. So now instead of feeling like you've made it, now your frame of reference says, oh, I need that car, I need those motorcycles, I need that boat. So suddenly you're back to where you were, being dissatisfied with your life. It's every single human. This is our human struggle. We're all in this together. So the good thing is to talk about it, to challenge each other, to really, when you feel that way, just mentally check yourself to say, is this really going to make me happy? And then once you've done that, you can actually make choices, right? And so that's part of what we're going to talk about, is just this, our ability as humans to have agency within our life and to make healthy choices. It's tremendous. So we have the chance to make ourselves happy and to bring more joy into our life. And so we're going to start. I'm just going to briefly talk about a lot of different things that bring happiness, and then we're going to really focus on one of them at the end and do some exercises. So let's get started on some things. All right, number one, I know I said money didn't bring you happiness, but I kind of lied. So let me talk about money, because money does bring happiness. Basically, what research says is the number is about $75,000. Give or take where you live, cost of living, that kind of thing. But basically, it's enough money that your needs are met and that you're not struggling and worried about money. So basically, we find that up until this point, around 75,000, people get happier when they get pay raises. And then things start plateauing over that. And basically, then it gets to a point after about 150,000 that actually happiness starts decreasing. And we'll talk about why. But so there is this idea of being able to have your needs met. This is a very important thing to being happy and to being fulfilled. But it's not everything, right? So that's where what we often do is we often trade time for money. Okay. So we think, wow, if I work more, if I do this, I'm going to get this much more money, I'm going to be happier. Well, there may be, if you're way under that 75,000, that actually will make you happier. But if you're up there where your needs are being met, basically you're shooting yourself in the foot, because time affluence will make you happier than money. So feeling like you have time in your life is actually a really huge strategy to giving you joy and happiness. So remember that. So remember where you are, like, and I don't know everyone's situation, but think about it and make sure you're making conscious decisions about time versus money. So I would say that's one of the biggest things to think about. All right, now we're going to go on to the next area that has so much research. There was a huge Harvard study done over about 75 years, and there's also a TED Talk about it. The number one, they followed these men, and this was starting, I don't remember exactly what year, but a long time ago. Some of them were Harvard graduates from Boston, and some were just men from Boston. Followed them over about 75 years, which is crazy. Very long longitudinal study. Biggest thing that came out of that study is the number one thing that made someone happy and a life satisfaction was their social connections. So I want you just to think about that right now. We're in a situation where so many of our social connections have kind of gotten ripped apart in some ways. But this is one of the top ways you can make yourself happy is having people in your life. And so I think the strategy here is that finding ways even now, and we know this is not forever, right? So we know that we're going to be able to be back in person and have some more normal life in the future, but really intentionally setting out to build family, friendships, that kind of thing, where you have one or two people in your life that you can actually call in the middle of the night if you're having a problem. And they've done studies where it used to be that people would say they had 4 or 5 people who they could do that. It's consistently gone down in our society to right now, basically, unfortunately, the majority of people say they have either zero or one person that they could call. And so that's really affecting our societal happiness. So really think about that and put in some intentional things. That they have done, you've heard all this thing of like, okay, smoking, and then they said sitting was the new smoking. Well, now it's kind of like loneliness is the new smoking. Literally, being lonely is the equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I mean, let that sink in. That's crazy. But this is an area where we can all make intentional choices to increase our social connections. And so those are, I'm talking about, deep friends who you could really call with a crisis. The crazy thing is that's not the only thing that makes us happy. They have these other studies where actually just minor social interactions during the day with people, strangers, can really bump up your happiness. They did a study with students and they had those students go onto the subway and they told them, okay, I want you to, start a conversation with someone near you. Of course, you can only imagine they were like, oh my gosh, this is so awkward. But crazy study because not only did it increase their happiness afterwards, it lasted for like a month. They studied them, and these people who had these minor social interactions with strangers, their happiness bumped up. So that's something that we can all do. We all have to go to the grocery store. We all have to go. We go get coffee. We do this. We do that. With just think about it and intentionally talk to a person next to you. And I know it feels, and some people, whether you're extrovert or introvert, but the intentionality in doing that can really increase your happiness without a lot of effort. So something to remember. So you have money, you have social connection. Our next one is going to be a sense of meaning and purpose. This is crucial to our happiness. And I think a lot of times people, when they hear the word happiness, they just think of like, positive feelings, or they just think of pleasure. But happiness is actually much more comprehensive in the world of positive psychology, and meaning and purpose are a huge part of our happiness and our joy. So if you come from a religious tradition, if you have a spiritual tradition in your life, that's a great place to get the meaning and purpose. And so it kind of comes built in. Now, if you're not coming from a spiritual tradition, you absolutely have meaning and purpose and can find it in your life. You just have to find it in other places. A lot of people find it in work. If you have a job that brings you this sense of meaning and purpose, this sense of that you are working towards something bigger than yourself. So that would be how the meaning and purpose. Really find whatever it is in your life that feels like you are contributing to something that is bigger than you are. So huge piece of just making sure and checking in with yourself as far as, do you have a sense of meaning and purpose? So the next one we're going to talk about is a sense of accomplishment. So also as humans, we're hardwired to achieve goals. And you don't, I know people who have, their checklist every day, they check off their goals, and that is great. I'm not that kind of person, not as organized. But I realize the importance of really specifically setting out to accomplish something and then doing it. And this is where you really need to set some goals, but also celebrate small victories towards them. I think a lot of times we set big goals, and they're ones that maybe will take a year or 2 years or whatever. and we don't celebrate the small little incremental victories along the way. And so then we don't get the boost in our happiness. But when you set a goal, set goals that are smaller too, that you can really celebrate and you can see progress. So another piece of our happiness. Another one that's been studied a lot is using our strengths and experience something called flow. And flow in positive psychology is a sense that you are so in your work or your hobby or whatever it is that you kind of lose track of time. So it's this sense that you're just part of this thing that's bigger than you, kind of a little bit of that purpose and meaning thing. But it's also using your strengths. So I would encourage you, and I don't know how much you have used, personality tools or anything like that, but to really know your strengths, there are a couple great ways to find out. One is to ask people around you. Just ask them, like, what do you see my strengths as? Just sit with yourself and write down some of those things that you feel like you're really good at, or things that character strengths that you feel like people would say about you. That's a great one. Personality tools. People that know me, I love the Enneagram. That's just me. There's Myers-Briggs. There's so many options out there of personality tools that can kind of, strengths finders is a great one, but they kind of help you find what your strengths are. So I would encourage you to incorporate that kind of self-awareness into your life. And then there's a really cool one. It's called BIA, BIA character.org. And it actually is a character. It's 24 character traits, and you take this free test online, and it ranks your character traits from 1 to 24. It's a great way to really become familiar with some of your character strengths, because I'm a big fan of that. I will say, if you take it, don't just go to number 24 and then feel bad about yourself, because that's also kind of what we do. Instead, look at your top 5 or 6 and pick out 2 or 3 of those that really resonate with you, and then try to incorporate those into your daily life in new ways. So I'm not going to spend, you could be talking about character, this whole webinar could be on character traits, and it might be a fun one to do. But you can actually incorporate these character strengths, and that is actually going to affect and increase your happiness and your joy. So a great one to do. I would highly encourage it. The next one, kindness. It's like random acts of kindness have been proven to really increase your joy. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, self-explanatory. I will say that if you set out to do this, you get the biggest boost in happiness if you actually do multiple ones around the same time. So let's say you're going to do 5 random acts of kindness, whatever they are. And you might intuitively think, oh, I'll do 1 a day. Well, you actually get a bigger boost if you do 5 in 1 day. Just an interesting little fact. So, maybe take a day and say 5 random acts of kindness today. So that's a good way to increase your happiness. Exercise. I've talked about that in a lot of the webinars, how important it is. There's so many reasons why exercise is important, and I'm not going to go into all of them. It's for moderate to mild depression. Exercise can be as good as an antidepressant. Now, that's not true for severe depression, but for mild to moderate. So let that sink into, and know that it really is something, if you don't have a routine going, that would be really beneficial for you. Mindfulness and meditation. And we just practiced a little tiny meditation, breath meditation. There's so many different ways you can incorporate this into your life. There are lots of free apps that you can get. I use Insight Timer. There's Calm. There's Headspace. Some are, you have to pay for, but there are lots of free ones. So I would say, find a way to start, even if it's a 2 minutes a day or 5 minutes a day. But to center yourself, like I said, lots of research on mindfulness and meditation. So, and if you're coming from a faith tradition, call it centering prayer. There are all kinds of ways to incorporate this into your life to really increase your happiness. The next 2 are are interesting because we don't hear about them as much, maybe. And one of them is awe, AWE, which is just a sense of being kind of like meaning and purpose, where it's something bigger than you are, and nature, being in nature. So these two are really tied together. It's usually being out in nature that gives us a sense of awe, and they both really increase our happiness. There in Japan, they have something called forest bathing, where they literally instruct people to go out into the forest, and that's their way to recover from hard things. But it's been proven to being in nature helps us recover. So look at where we live. Like, this weekend, get out on a trail, go on a hike, and then you have exercise and nature in one fell swoop. It's a great way to increase your happiness. And then the next one, I'm not going to talk as much about it as I'm going to mention it. It's kind of loaded. It's actually forgiveness. And depending on your story, like this can be a really hard thing to talk about for some people because they have really hard things in their story, and that's a hard thing to forgive. I will say if you're the kind of person that tends to hold the grudges, that is actually going to impact negatively your happiness. So just think about that. And that's no judgment. That's just something for you to process. If you have a story where you have a lot of trauma and there are people who have really hurt you, I would highly recommend thinking about going to see a coach or a therapist, to work through some of that trauma, because the more you hold on to that, it absolutely is going to affect your life negatively. So once again, it's a topic that we could spend a whole webinar on, forgiveness. But I would just highly encourage you to kind of self-evaluate. And if you have places in your life where you have grudges, there's a lot of work out there on how to actually forgive. And it's basically you're releasing the person. It's not about them not getting what they're due, or you letting go and releasing your past. It's just basically letting go. So there's a lot of tools out there of ways to do that. So I will definitely say that's a big one, and it's a loaded one too. So we'll leave it at that. And then we're finally going to get into our main topic for today, and one of them, it has so much research. It's my very favorite way to increase happiness, and it's gratitude. And so this is one that is so easy to incorporate into your life, and it has so many benefits. So we're going to talk about gratitude, and just like, what is gratitude, right? I think we all have an idea. It's simply being grateful for the good things we have in our life. And I think the reality is we all have so many good things, but our brains, here's where our brains get us back into trouble again. We have something called a negativity bias going on all the time, right? So basically, it's you have this thing in your brain that's always scanning the environment for threats. Because hey, if you missed a tiger in the bush, right? You're not going to live to see tomorrow to collect the berries. So the threat was a much bigger thing to take care of than any opportunity out there, right? So basically, it's like negativity is like Velcro. So anything that's negative in your environment is going to stick automatically in your brain. Anything positive is like Teflon. So it just kind of slides off. We typically don't notice it. So if something is positive, you actually have to specifically recognize it as being positive for it to impact your happiness. So you have to work. That's the problem, is that our default setting is always working against us in the happiness. Now it's trying to keep us alive from tigers, which might not be so handy right now since we don't live there. But our default setting is working against our happiness. So once you recognize that, you can actually counter it. And you can use your agency to actually put things into place that are going to increase your happiness. So gratitude is one of the biggest ways for you to do that. So it's just, we're going to do a few exercises. And actually, if you don't have access to like some paper and a pen right now, just kind of do that while I talk a little bit, because we're going to do a few exercises, just really short. All of these are things that you can definitely spend a lot more time. And I'm just going to kind of give you a taste of some different things you can do. So I think we've all heard about, gratitude journaling. That's a great one, right? And it's really effective to maybe do a gratitude journal, 3 things a day that you're grateful for, and to link that with a habit you already have. So like building habits, another whole topic we could talk about, how it's hard to build a new habit. The easiest way to build a habit is to link it to a habit you already have. For example, if you have coffee every morning, put your gratitude journal by your coffee maker. If you brush your teeth, which I hope you do, put your gratitude journal by your toothbrush. Whatever it is that you already have built into your life, put your gratitude journal and just help you to actually follow through with that. So that gratitude journal, 3 things, a day, great thing you can do. A fun one, especially if you have kids, is something called a gratitude jar. You get a big jar, and everyone in the family writes 1 thing a day they're grateful for. They put it in the jar. And then once a week, you sit down and you pull them all out and you just read them. And what a great way for everybody to remember what they're grateful for. Super easy, and I guarantee kids would love that one. Another one, thank you emails or thank you texts. So first thing in the morning when you're starting your workday, write 1 thank you email or send 1 thank you text to someone who helped you either the day before or the week before, or whatever, to get your day started. And then you're starting your day with gratitude, which is a great thing to do. So those are all just some simple ones. And now we're going to actually practice a few. Okay. So there's also something called a gratitude meditation. And a lot of these free apps I talked to you about have, you can specifically like look at gratitude meditations. They have them. I'm going to read one from a book I have. And you can just kind of see what it's like and that kind of thing. But I want everyone to close your eyes. And this is just kind of sit comfortably, take a few deep breaths. And this meditation is called Being Thankful. Take a deep breath and relax. Think of someone you really appreciate. What are some of the things that this person has given to you? Let these memories become feelings of thankfulness. And let those feelings sink in. Think about what has been fortunate in your life, such as your natural talents, when or where you were born, who your parents were, good luck that has come to you. Without taking away from your own efforts, open to feeling thankful for your good fortune. Consider the world of nature, flowers, trees, flocks of birds, all the life in the ocean. In your mind or out loud, say what happens when you say thank you. Let your thanks fill your heart and ripple outward. Consider some of the many objects you use every day that have been made by or invented by other people, often long ago. Wheels, safety pins, smartphones, soy sauce, street lights, stop signs, zippers, belts, all handed to you, gifted to you, deserving of your thanks. Step back and think about all the things that have happened to bring our Milky Way into being, our solar system, our galaxy, our own sweet planet, life emerging over 3 billion years ago, our own human species appearing, your grandparents being born and having children who met and had you. So many things coming to bring you into being. Looking upstream at the river of time, you can see so many things to be thankful for. Wow. Thank you. Okay, come on back to here and we'll just talk. That's an example of a gratitude meditation. I love it because even the whole thing about being thankful for zippers and soy sauce, and I mean there's like so many little things every day, everything we do, that without our lives would be really hard, right? So it's just a great way to remember that. So that's a gratitude meditation. So now the next thing I want to do is I want to do a little practice on gratitude journaling. And this is going to be a little different than the three, the gratitude journal I talked about, like coming up with 3 things you're thankful for every day. Because one of the things they're finding too is that the more specific you get about your gratitude, the more it impacts positively your happiness. So, for example, you can go and it's very helpful to list 3 things every day, right? But sometimes what's really great is to think about 1 or 2 things and find 5 reasons why you're grateful for that thing. So we're going to do a little practice. So get your paper and your pen out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a statement to you. And then you can either write the statement or just write your answers. Basically, I'm going to, like the first one, I'm going to say, I am grateful for my family because, and then I want you to write 5 reasons or 3, whatever comes to mind, of why you're grateful for your family. So let's start with that one. I am grateful for my family because, and I'll give you a minute to just write some things. All right, so the next one. I am grateful for my friend blank. So you pick a friend name, say it's Jane. I am grateful for my friend Jane because, and then 3 to 5 reasons why you're grateful for that friend. All right, the next one. I am grateful for who I am because. So list 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for about who you are, whether these character strengths or physical attributes, whatever you want to do. And the final one. I am grateful for my work because. Okay, so if you want to go back to that later, if you didn't finish, that's great. But it's also if you get into this habit of a gratitude journal, and let's say you have a day where you're like, well, I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my job. I'm grateful, and you start getting into ruts of what you're grateful for. Maybe take a day where you just do this, where you take one thing, and it could be your house, it could be your office, it could be whatever, and just write 5 reasons. And that the specificity really helps for the gratitude. So that's gratitude journaling with a twist. And then our final little practice I want to talk to you about is something called a gratitude letter. And basically, it's so oftentimes there are so many people in our lives who have impacted us positively in all kinds of ways, right? I mean, none of us would be sitting here without those people. Sometimes it's our parents, sometimes it's our friends, sometimes it's a teacher, it's a mentor. There's so many people who have impacted us in a positive way. And so oftentimes we don't spend the time to say thank you. And the crazy thing about this is when you write a letter to someone thanking them for how they've impacted you, it really does increase their happiness. But the crazy thing is it increases your happiness even more. So there's lots of research on this. It's another one that you can find studies on. It's really a fun one. But we're going to do a little practice of it today. And know that I'm not this in general. If I were doing this in person with you, I'd probably give you like 15 to 20 minutes to work on this. That gets really awkward when you're on the computer. So we're not. I'm going to just give you like 2 or 3 minutes, but hopefully you'll be able to just kind of get a sense and then go back to it. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. And I want you to think of a person who has had a big positive impact on your life. It can be anyone. So just get that person in your head, imagine them, picture them. I mean, it can be someone living or someone who's passed on, but I mean, if it's living there, if someone's living, it's a little easier to do. But definitely, it can be someone who's passed away. But once you have that person, okay, go ahead and open your eyes now that you have this person. So we're gonna spend, I'm gonna say 4 minutes. I think that's give you enough time to get started. But so we're gonna spend 4 minutes writing. And I want you to write a letter to that person telling them how they have positively impacted you. Okay. And you can just do bullet points if you want. You can actually write a letter to them as if you were writing. But let's just spend some time where you think about writing down all the ways this person has positively impacted you. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes and then we'll come back together. So go ahead and start. So I know that this is not enough time for you to really get into this practice. And like I said, you know, I would normally give people 20 to 30 minutes. But I hope you got I hope you got the start. You know, you started thinking about this person and you started jotting some things down. And now my challenge to you is to actually, if this person is living, to actually share this with them in person, over the phone, send it to them. So the studies show that that's where the biggest boost in happiness comes from is when you actually share this with them. Basically, the, the, the more you can do it either in person or over the phone, the better, so that you can have this interaction. So that would be my challenge is now as you've started this, that you would just go ahead and follow through and share this with that person. And I mean, you know, there it is. It's like not only giving you the boost, but it's kindness because the person you're sharing with, I guarantee it's going to make their day. So, and it'll make yours too. So there you have just a few little, some practices, you know, some general practices to really increase our happiness. And then this idea of gratitude as just one of these core concepts that I just hope that you can really incorporate into your life in new ways. And we just have a few minutes, maybe like 5 minutes, but I would love to see if anybody wants to share anything along these lines or something else. But you know, if anyone wants to share a little bit about gratitude, if they have a practice, or you know, actually, I might even put Lawrence on the spot. And because I did this with last year with the exponential impact teams, and Lawrence had an amazing story of what happened after this. And if Lawrence is willing, I'd love to hear have you share, Lawrence. So
Yeah, so Bessie had our class do a gratitude. Um, we could write a letter. Instead of writing a letter, I called a friend and left a gratitude voicemail. Um, and the person listened to the voicemail and called me back crying. They were so happy and shocked that I sent them this out of the blue, random, just gratitude, telling them how thankful I was for them to be in my life. And so I felt really good. That person felt really good as well. And it was just a great experience.
thank you, Lawrence. That I love that story. So I had to. Does anyone have anything real quick? Like I said,